Please allow me to confuse you for 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, let's do that. So what I want you to do is I want you to maybe pause the video and then try to write the conjugation table or fill the conjugation table for these three verbs. The verbs are schreiben, unterschreiben, and aufschreiben. Yeah. So if you use the logic, you will have, if you want to conjugate the verb schreiben, then you remove n and you write everything as it is. So you write schreib everywhere, you know. Let me just do it with a different color. Okay, so you will write schreib here, you will write schreib here, also here you will write schreib, then here also you will write schreib. Okay, you removed n and you wrote whatever is left. For ich you added a, for du you added st, for rsc you added te, for ei you added te. Okay, what about via and zz? It's the actual verb itself, so you just write the actual verb as it is. Okay, I hope you can write the actual verb as it is. Okay, yeah, by that logic, this one, just remove n, so you have unterschreibe, unterschreibs, unterschreibt, unterschreibt here as well, and here the actual verb itself, that is unterschreiben and unterschreiben. Same logic, so remove n, so you will write aufschreibe, aufschreibe, aufschreibs, aufschreibt, aufschreibt, and here the actual verb itself, that is, when I say actual verb itself, I mean the verb in its infinitive form. Okay, so this is called as, so this is called as infinitive form. Okay, or we also call it grund form, basis form, just how the verb normally is, when it is not being conjugated. Okay, so 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 now, I hope you had paused the video and tried to do the table on your own. This is the table you would have come up with. Yeah, this is the table you would have come up with, a, st, and then te, and here, I mean, you can say like, you remove n and then you add n again, or just you don't do anything, you write the verb as it is. Okay, yeah, but there is one problem. Problem is you are right for this verb, you are also right for this verb. The conjugation table for aufschreiben is not 100% correct. Okay, there is one small thing you did not do, and what is the, I mean, again, the mistake is done because you have not learned that until now. Now you have to learn something new, and that's why this mistake was done. So if you knew how to do it properly, you would not say so. So as per your knowledge, whatever you know until now, this is how you would write. Okay, ich aufschreibe, ich aufschreibs. But actually you should write this schreibe, one second, schreibe dot dot dot, I mean, anything else, auf, schreibs, auf, schreibt, auf, schreiben auf, schreibt auf, schreiben auf. What basically I am doing is, so you had written this as auf, schreibe. What I am saying is, you don't write auf over here, you write auf at the end. That's it. That's all I have done. Why do we have to do it? Because this is a Trennbare Verb. Okay, what does the adjective Trennbar mean? It means separable. Yeah, Trennbar means separable. Yeah, separable. There is also a verb called as trennen. Trennen means to separate. There is a noun. The noun is die Trennung. Plural Trennungen. What does it mean? Separation. Yeah, separation. Okay. Why is it die? Because it is ending with ong. Any noun ending with ong is die, feminine. Okay. Now, again, coming back to the topic, aufschreiben is a separable verb. What's a separable verb? We will learn that. Okay. Then again, actually, it's a separable verb, and there is something called as nicht trennbare Verb, meaning not separable verb. So until now you may have learned about you learned about regular verbs, then mixed verbs, and then irregular verbs. You learned about that. The criteria there was how the verb gets conjugated. Okay, there the criteria was how the verb gets conjugated. Now this division, whether a verb is separable or not, what is the criteria for this? The criteria is certain verbs will have a prefix. Certain verbs will have a prefix. Even this has a prefix, right? Okay, so the verb schreiben, right? Let me zoom in. So you have the verb schreiben. Okay, what is unterschreiben? It's nothing but schreiben with a prefix, and the prefix is unter. What is aufschreiben? Aufschreiben is nothing but schreiben with a prefix, that is auf. Okay, when the prefix is not separable. Okay, when it's not separable, it is a nicht trennbare verb or a not separable verb. If the prefix is separable, yeah, it is a separable. If the answer is yes, is it separable? What is separable? The prefix. In German we call it prefix. Yeah, prefix, not prefix, prefix. Yeah, if the prefix is separable, yeah, just like here, it's a separable verb. It's a trennbare verb. If the prefix is not separable, it's nicht trennbare, not separable verb. Then what is schreiben? You'll say, okay, in schreiben also I'm not breaking anything, right? I'm just writing the verb as a whole. Is it not a nicht trennbare verb? No, it's not, because you cannot. I mean, the logic, you are saying like, if I don't separate anything, then it is by default a nicht trennbare verb. No, that's not the criteria. If there is a prefix, and if that prefix is not separable, then you can say, okay, it's a nicht trennbare verb. Okay, if there is no prefix only, then okay, you are not breaking anything apart, but still it has no prefix. So how can you even say it's a separable or not separable verb? I hope that is clear. So now you understand, at least you have some like idea about what's a trennbare verb, what's a nicht trennbare verb. Trennbare verb is nothing but a verb with a prefix which is separable. What's a nicht trennbare verb? It's a verb with a prefix which is not separable. That's the distinction between a trennbare and a nicht trennbare verb. I hope you know by now. I mean, it's nicht means not. Yeah, not. So let's continue. Again, the slide is just telling you what I just told you. Unterschreiben is a nicht trennbare verb. Okay, nicht trennbare verb. Aufschreiben is a trennbare verb. Yeah. Why is it nicht trennbare verb? Because prefix is not separable, so nicht trennbare. Prefix is separable, so trennbare verb. Okay. You will have a lot of questions. Hold on, all your questions will be answered. Like the question may be like, how do I how do I know, or how will you know that, here the prefix, it like, here I had to write like this, ich unterschreibe. Yeah, because that's how it is. And here, how do I know it is separable? And that's why I have to write like this, So if it's a separable verb, that's how you will have to write the sentence. Yeah. How do you know? How do I know that this is a not separable prefix? How do I know this is a separable prefix? You will have all the questions that you have will be answered. Just hold on. So let's continue. We will now just go through some examples with each of these verbs. Okay, we will now just go through some examples with each of these verbs. So here the examples are with the verb schreiben. So ich schreibe, sie schreibt, er schreibt, wir schreiben, ich schreibe. Then you can have objects, right? Ich schreibe einen Brief, I write a letter. Sie schreibt in ihr Tagebuch, in her daily journal, daily book. Er schreibt eine E-Mail, he writes an email. Wir schreiben heute, today, the notes. Ich schreibe an article for the newspaper. Okay, but basically, if you have a sentence with a just normal verb, okay, not a separable verb, also not a separable, also not a not separable, okay, just a normal verb, okay, which has no prefix. A verb which has no prefix, you don't worry, just you have subject verb, and then you write whatever you want to write. Okay, you have subject verb, then you write whatever you want to write. Now let's look at the other verb which does have a prefix, okay, but it is not separable. How does the sentence look like? You have er unterschreibt, sie unterschreibt, wir unterschreiben, der Chef unterschreibt, Ich unterschreibe. Again, what what does he sign? Unterschreibe means to sign, put a signature on the contract, the document, form, letter, contract, and so on, right? But what is the difference in between? So here, what I want you to understand is when you're trying to frame a sentence, when you're trying to frame a sentence, you have a subject, then you have verb, and then you can have whatever else you want. You may have an object as well, yeah. Whether it's a normal verb without a prefix or whether it's a verb with a prefix which is not separable, there is no difference in how you frame the sentence. It's still the same. Yeah. If you want to convert this to a yes or no question, you will just write Schreibe ich einen Brief. That's all. Okay. If you want to convert this to a yes or no question, this one, all you have to do is just place the verb before and the subject after. So you will say unterschreibt den Vertrag. Unterschreibt er den Vertrag. That's all you have to do. What I'm trying to help you understand is, what I want you to understand is that whether it's a, so you already know how to frame sentences with a normal verb. Okay. Now you also know how to frame sentences with a verb which has a prefix, but the prefix is not separable, meaning it's a not separable verb. I mean, there is no difference. You just treat it as a normal verb when framing a sentence. That's what I want you to understand. So now let's look at the sentences with the verb aufschreiben, which has a prefix, and the prefix is separable. It is a separable. It's a Trennbare prefix. Okay. Now, how do the sentences look like? You don't say ich aufschreibe. You say ich schreibe, and then the auf is at the end. Ich schreibe bla bla auf. Sie schreibt whatever auf. Er schreibt, whatever it is, auf. Wir schreiben bla 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 bla, and then let's say you have the auf at the end. Yeah, you have the auf at the end. Okay. What about the next sentence? Ich, again, ich schreibe auf. Yeah. So what do you notice is when you have I'm repeating myself. When you have a verb with a prefix which is not separable, there is no change in the sentence structure. You just write, you write subject, verb, and whatever else you want to write. It may be an object. But the moment you are writing a sentence with a verb which has a prefix and the prefix is separable, then what do you have to do? You have to take the prefix, remove it from the actual verb, and write it at the very end. Okay, see, it's always before full stop. Okay, and this is a rule. When you have a verb, when you have a sentence with a Trennbare Verb, a separable verb, a verb which has a prefix and the prefix is separable, then the prefix goes to the end and they just conjugate the verb normally. Yeah. Okay. Now the question is, okay, if I want to convert this to a yes or no question, what will happen? Same logic. You just write the verb first, then the subject schreibe ich, and then the Nummer auf question mark. Okay, auf will still be at the end. Okay, if you want to convert this to a double word question, then you can say, for example, when let's say this one. Okay, instead of saying like er schreibt alles auf, he writes everything. Aufschreiben means to note down. Okay, to take down notes. So instead of saying where, I can say where. Instead of saying he writes everything down, I can say wer schreibt alles auf. Even then, the auf will be at the end. What do I mean by auf? The prefix. So when you are trying to frame a sentence with a separable verb, whether it is a statement, a yes or no question, or a W word question, the prefix is always going to be the end, going to be at the end. I hope you understood. This is very crucial. Okay. Okay, that was the grammar again. So now you understand what's a separable verb, no, what's a not separable verb. You get it, Separable verb is a verb which has a prefix and the prefix is separable. Not separable verb, nicht trennbare verb, is a verb which has a prefix and the prefix is not separable. You understand the difference. Now, let's just learn the sentence formation with separable verb one more time. Okay, I think you know it already, but let's just learn it one more time. Okay, so this is how a sentence structure looks like with a normal verb, or like with a verb which has a prefix but the prefix is not separable. No problem. Yeah. So how to build sentences with nicht trennbare verb? I mean, Just treat them like a normal verb, right? Subject, verb, object. Yes or no question, just how to convert a, if you know how to frame a statement, if you know how to frame a statement, then if you want to convert a statement to a yes or no question, just write the verb first and the subject after that. Okay. If you want to convert a yes or no question to a W word question, just take the yes or no question as it is, write it as it is, and write the W word before that. Okay, no change. Now, how to build sentences with Trennbare Verb. Okay, so the last slide was about nicht Trennbare Verb, nothing new. How to frame sentences with Trennbare Verb. Again, it's, I think you know it already. All you have to do is separate the, the verb is aufschreiben. Okay, the verb is aufschreiben. All you have to do is separate the prefix from the verb and write it at the end. Okay, and then just as it is, subject, verb, object, subject. Sorry. Now, if you have the subject, verb, you may or may not have an object, and then the prefix at the end. Okay, if you want to write something, it has to be before the prefix and after the verb. Okay, and if you want to convert a a statement or an answer to a yes or no question, what do you have to do? Take the verb, place it at the first position, and the subject goes after it. That's all that happened. The prefix is still at the end. If you want to convert a yes or no question to W word question, what do you have to do? Take the yes or no question. I know I am repeating myself. It can be irritating, but I have to repeat myself. So just take the yes or no question as it is and write it as it is. And you may add whatever W word question fits appropriately. Okay. If there are any questions, please ask in the comments or you can ask in the next live session. I hope you understood. Okay. Now, so by now you should know, if I give you, okay, you still don't know how to, like, if I just give you some random verbs, if I give you, for example, you have the verb arbeiten. Okay. Now, the verb arbeiten means to work. Let's say if I give you two verbs now, be arbeiten, and then the verb einarbeiten. Okay. Einarbeiten. Now, if I ask you, they both have prefix, but tell me which one is a Trennbare Verb, which is a not which is a nicht Trennbare Verb. How will you know? So this question I have not provided the answer as of now. You will get the answer. Hold on. But if I tell you that einarbeiten is a separable verb, if I tell you that einarbeiten is a separable verb, then if you decide to frame a sentence with einarbeiten, it will be ich, then ein at the end, and arbeite. Yeah, and du, ein at the end, arbeitest. Okay, I think you get it. Okay, and if I tell you bearbeiten is a nicht trennbare verb, like you cannot separate the prefix, then so there will be no, there will be, you will not write like this ish. Let me just clear the screen. If I tell you bearbeiten is a nicht trennbare verb, so you will not separate the prefix. Okay, you will not write like this ish, be at the end, and then arbeiter. Okay, you will not write like this because it's a not separable prefix. Then you have to write like this ish, bearbeiter, du bearbeitest, and so on. Okay, all right. So I think now you understand. Let's continue. Okay, let's continue. So what I want you to understand is, what I want you now to understand is, I gave you, so how do I know that, let's just go back. Now the how do I know that unterschreiben is a nicht trennbare Verb and aufschreiben is a trennbare Verb? How do I know that? Okay, now you will learn how do I know that. So before I give you that answer, I want you to, this slide is available. Okay, I want you to go through this slide on your own. The slide contains 3 columns. Yeah, in the first column, so this slide, I mean, it has a text. Let's just read the text. Again, just saying that there are verbs. The question is, again answering the question. Was sind trennbare Verben? What are trennbare Verben? And the answer is there are verbs in German language which have a prefix. And if the prefix is and if this prefix is separable, then these verbs are referred to as Trennbare Verben. That's a simple answer. And was sind nicht Trennbare Verben? Answer is pretty straightforward. There are verbs in German language which have a prefix, and if the prefix is not separable, then these verbs are referred to as nicht trennbare Verben. That's all. That's the definition. Okay. Now, what does this table contain? This table contains three columns. In the first column, you have verbs. Let's just zoom in. One second. So the title is base verb. I mean, until now when you learn sagen, right? I just said it's a verb. Now I'm saying it's a base verb. I can add prefixes to it. I can say ab sagen, zu sagen, and so on and so on. And if I add a prefix to sagen, okay, sagen is a basis verb. If I add a prefix to it, then if the prefix is separable, it will be referred to as a trennbare verb or a separable verb. If I can add, for example, prefix like ab, zu, zu, an, then nak, all these prefixes are separable. Okay, all these prefixes are separable, and that's why these verbs are referred to as separable or trennbare Verben. Then I can add more prefixes to the verb sagen. The verb is still sagen, the base verb. I can add fair to it, the prefix fair. I can add the prefix unter to it. Okay, but these are not separable prefixes, and that's why these verbs are referred to as nicht trennbar, not un. I think this is wrong. It should be nicht trennbare Verb. Yeah, nicht trennbare Verb. Okay, so these are nicht trennbare Verb. Okay. What I want you to do is, I want you to go through before you find out the answer, how to identify which prefixes are separable, which are not separable. Before you do that, I want you to read all these examples aloud, like this. Sagen, absagen, zusagen, and keep on reading. Rufen, anrufen, zurückrufen. Okay. Also, I want one more thing for I think I also want you to do one more thing while you read. Whenever the prefix is separable, you emphasize it. So you say absagen, zusagen, ansagen. Okay, let me just read. Absagen, zusagen, ansagen. If you notice, right, I'm having a very short pause. Maybe I'm overdoing it, but you have to emphasize it. And how do you emphasize? Okay, you don't say it like, ansagen. No, you say ansagen. Okay, even if you speak fast, you have to emphasize the an part. Okay, yeah, and you do it for separable verbs. But if the prefix is not separable, then you don't emphasize it. You just say versagen, untersagen. Okay, I'm not saying versagen, I'm not saying untersagen, I'm just saying versagen, untersagen. I'm not emphasizing the prefix. So that's what you have to do. Okay, that's also one more thing, right? So let's say if somebody, for example, like, if a German reads these two verbs, bearbeiten and einarbeiten. If a German reads these two verbs, he will read like this: einarbeiten, bearbeiten. Yeah, einarbeiten, bearbeiten. You notice, right? I'm not emphasizing the be, but I'm emphasizing ein. German will not read like this, okay? Bearbeiten, einarbeiten. No, he'll not read like this, okay? And that's how you can identify whether the verb is separable or not, just by hearing it, okay? Just by hearing, you'll identify whether the verb is separable or not. Don't worry, there is also one more way. Just by reading, you can know. You don't have to, like, if you want to figure out whether the verb is separable or not, you ask a German to read. You don't have to do that. Just by looking at the prefix, you can say whether it is separable or not. For example, fair is always separable, almost always separable. Okay, bay is almost always separable. Okay, so whenever you come across these prefixes, they are always separable. Then whenever you have the prefix ab, it's almost always separable, almost always. An is always separable. Suruk, I'm not sure. Yeah, su is always separable, and so on. Okay, so there are certain prefixes which are always separable. There are certain prefixes which are never separable, and there are certain prefixes which are sometimes separable, not separable, depending It depends. Okay, they are outliers. Okay, I'll give you the list of the separable prefixes as well as the inseparable prefixes. Don't worry about that now. But I was saying something else. I was saying you are supposed to read all this. Okay, so you are supposed to read row by row. So you have to. I know you can't see, but I'll just say. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll zoom in and I'll tell you how to read. So what I want you to do is again, let's just go back. I want you to read all these verbs row by row before you continue. Okay. Yeah, we did this in the live session. I want all of you to read these verbs one by one. Okay. So first you read the base verb, then you read all the uh, separable forms of it, then you read all the non-separable forms of the same verb. Okay, please do that. In the brackets you will find some meanings. Okay, please understand a one verb can have many meanings. Okay, one verb can, like, one word can have many meanings. Okay, I hope you get it. Okay, so here the meaning that we have given is the, like, it's the common meaning, but absagen may mean something else. I don't know, but normally when I use the verb absagen, I mean it to say to cancel or reject. If you have your calendar, if you have your Outlook, what I was saying is, if your Outlook, if your German if your Outlook, right, the Microsoft Outlook or any other app or whatever, like, application you use for meetings, meetings and emails and all. Okay, and if somebody sends you a meeting, sends you an invite, yeah, sends you an invite, you have option two. The options will be, the options will be absagen and zusagen. Okay, and what I try to say with that, okay, what I'm trying to convey, what is the message I'm trying to convey with that? You will find in brackets the English meanings, but don't think of them as translations. Think of them as interpretations. Okay, I'm not sure that. Okay, I cannot guarantee that absagen only means cancel and rejection. It may mean something else as well. But here the meanings which we have given in brackets, they are the usual meanings. Okay, usual meanings. For example, for me, absagen usually means to reject or cancel. Zusagen usually means to confirm or accept. If you apply for a job, you get a Zusage, you get a acceptance. Yeah, acceptance or confirmation. If you get a Absage, it's a rejection. If you get a meeting from someone, meeting invites from, you can, the options are Absagen to cancel and Zusagen. You will see this in Outlook if your Outlook is in German. I hope you get the point. Okay, don't forget you have to read all these verbs. Okay, read all the verbs one by one and try to see if you can memorize them. They're important verbs. Now the most important question is, how to identify. One way is that, if somebody is reading, if somebody is reading a separable verb, then they will read like this: ansagen. They will not say ansagen, they'll say ansagen. Okay, there is a pause, or you have to emphasize the prefix. Okay, and if somebody is reading a verb with a prefix which is not separable, then they will not say versagen, they'll say versagen. Yeah, they will not emphasize. They will not say berufen, they'll say berufen. Yeah, they will not emphasize. That's how you can identify a verb by like, if somebody is reading it. Okay, but how to identify? By just looking at the verb. That is the question we have to answer now. Then let's try to answer that question. One second. Yeah, let's go to that slide. Okay, this is the slide. So if you look at the slide, I'll zoom in, don't worry. You can also see how they have the slides. You can zoom on your own screen. Yeah, so you have certain prefixes which are always separable. Then there are certain prefixes which are never separable. Then there are outliers which can be sometimes separable, sometimes not separable. Okay. You will only find examples of verbs with separable and not separable prefixes. I have not given you examples of verbs with outliers. Does not really make sense. Just focus on what you can understand. Right? Even if I give you examples, eh, just trust me. Focus on the deterministic part. Okay. So these two things are deterministic. So whenever you come across a verb with a prefix aus, just close your eyes and say it's a separable verb. Whenever you come across a verb with a prefix and, er, or emp, just close your eyes and say it's a non-separable. That's how sure you can be. So now I will just go through the prefixes one by one. The Trennbare prefixes. So you have ab, an, auf, aus will keep well, buy as well. Now, should you memorize the prefixes? Yes, you can memorize, but what is even better is you memorize one example. Okay, you memorize one example. So, for example, abfahren, abholen, absehen, abbrechen. Please check what they mean. Okay, don't want to give the meanings. Okay, for example, abholen means to pick up someone. What's abfahren, absehen, abbrechen? Abbrechen. Please look their meanings up. Okay, and think which is the verb which is more important to your personal or professional life. Okay, and then remember that verb. For example, un is a separable prefix. Don't remember that un is a separable prefix. Remember that unrufen is a separable verb. Unrufen means to call. Okay. Unbeaten means to offer. Yeah. Which I think unrufen, like all of you call at least once per day. You call someone or someone calls you. I think it's so common in your life. Then remember, unrufen is a separable verb, and unrufen is a separable verb, and un is a separable prefix. Yeah. Then whenever you come across any other verb which has the same prefix as unrufen, assume it to be separable. Okay. Let's continue reading. So you have ein, los, mit, nach, her, hin, vor, weg, zu, zurück. Okay, then let's look at the nicht trennbare prefix here. So you have be, emp, ent. Again, you can memorize the prefixes or you can memorize, for example, one example. For example, beantworten means to answer. Okay, beantworten is means to answer. It means when you get an email from someone, you have to beantworten, like you do beantwortest the email. Yeah, so you answer the email or respond to the email. Yeah, respond or to answer. Okay, so beantwort, again, what I'm trying to say is that if you can memorize the prefixes, but it's best if you memorize an example of a verb with that prefix, and then whenever you come across any other verb which shares the same prefix as beantworten, then that will be not separable verb, nicht trennbare verb, or the verb with a nicht trennbare prefix, not separable prefix. Okay, I hope you get the point. So let's continue reading. So you have, let's just zoom out a little bit. So you have be, emp, ent, er, ge, miss, fair, zer. Okay, notice I don't say fair or zer because you're not supposed to pronounce the alphabet air at the end of a word that much. You should do it, but not too much. Okay, you have to be subtle about it. You just say fair. Yeah, either you say nothing, just say ignore it, fair, zer. Yeah, okay, but don't just say fair, zer. You have to elongate the a part. Okay, fair, zer. All right, I hope you got it. If not, I hope you're not too much confused. I mean, just don't overdo it. Okay, don't say fair. You can say fair, it's fine, but don't say fair. Yeah, just say fair, fair. I hope it's obvious. Let's now look at the outliers. Don't focus on all the. I'll just read them because it's there on the slide. Don't focus on the outliers. You have durch, hinter, über, unter, and okay, focus on right? Is a very common prefix. Maybe just look at, like, whenever you come across any verbs which says check whether it is separable or not. Just check. Okay, just check. Okay, focus on the I want you to focus on the, I mean, you should at least remember one examples from the separable prefixes and one examples from the best if you remember multiple examples, but at least one. So you should know that which are separable, which are not separable prefixes. Also one example from here, the non-separable prefixes. Oh, okay, I hope you got it. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments, or you can ask in the next live session. Okay, so this slide is basically just answering this what I already gave the answer to. So how to identify a trennbare verb when you hear it for the first time? If the prefix gets emphasized, it's a separable verb, trennbare verb. If the prefix does not get emphasized, it's a non-separable verb, not a trennbare verb. I think it's obvious. We already gave the answer. We already looked at it. Okay, let's continue. Okay, this was a homework. I think you are doing it. You please try to introduce yourself in German. I mean, just don't start speaking. Write, 2-page essay. trying to introduce yourself, you don't have to start by writing in German. You can start writing in English, okay? And use simple English. When I say simple, don't make complex sentences, because then you have to convert this to a German language. And I don't want you to use any German language tool. Don't use ChatGPT or Deep Transfer Google Translate. See if you can write simple sentences in German, okay? And that's why when you write about yourself in English, don't make very complex sentences, say simple sentences, okay? And then you should be able to, you should try, without using any tool, to write those sentences in German, okay? See if you can do it.